Every lasting movement begins with a clear purpose and steady hands. For Young Living, those hands were Gary and Mary Young's. From their humble beginnings in Idaho, Gary and Mary built a life around purpose, purity, and perseverance. Together, they dreamed of bringing the pure power of nature into every home and empowering others to share it. Mary first began in direct sales back in 1985. Within 2 years, she built a thriving multi-million-dollar organization. What was it built on? Connection, compassion, and a belief in people.
I watched a lot of people discover they could do things they didn't think they could do. Just as I discovered I could do what I didn't think I could do.
When she and Gary founded Young Living, they poured that same belief into the heart of the company. Gary was the visionary pioneer and farmer, and Mary was the steadfast builder and leader. Together, they cultivated something extraordinary. From the first seed planted in Idaho soil to the first bottle being sealed, they worked side by side, each honoring the same mission and values that continue to guide Young Living today.
And I love to talk about business because I could inspire people to see the vision of what a business could do for them personally. It's not about making money, but it's about what money can do.
Since Gary's passing, Mary has carried that same mission forward with grace, strength, and conviction. As founder and now CEO, she remains deeply involved in the company's direction and culture, guiding the executive team, mentoring members, and ensuring that the values that she and Gary established continue to thrive. Through the D. Gary Young Living Foundation, she champions education, enterprise, and healing projects that uplift communities around the world. To Mary, success has always meant service, building into people, nurturing families, and empowering others to live with purpose.
But if you can be with like-minded people and you can inspire good, honest people to make money and do good things with their money, what are you doing for the world as a whole? It takes money to change things. And it takes the money in the hands of people to change. The money doesn't do it by itself. It's the people using the money.
Today, she shares the same vision with her sons, Jacob and Joseph. And they now carry the family legacy into the future. Together, they all honor Gary's pioneering spirit and Mary's enduring leadership. It's a legacy built on faith, integrity, and a love for humanity.
I love the network marketing model because it is an opportunity for people to discover that they're more than what they think they are, that they can do more than they think they can.
From a small start in Idaho to a global movement in more than 100 countries, their influence is felt in every bottle, every seed, every farm, every story of transformation, and every seal. Please welcome the co-founder, the heart of Young Living, and the woman who continues to lead with the same conviction that began it all, Mary Young.
Richard Bliss, Brooke here. We are live.
We sit here today with none other than
Mark Victor Hansen,
Bob Proctor.
This is Kendra Hall,
Tanya Stringer,
Jeff Canfield,
Whit Jones,
James Clear,
Les Brown.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us for the Authentic Networker podcast. I have in the house Mary Young from Lehi, Utah, the owner and founder of Billion Dollar Young Living. And we're going to get her 30-year story about how does an opera star become a network marketer, build an awesome team herself, and then find the love of her life. And then the two of them go about building a multi-billion-dollar company. How does that happen? And Mary says she's going to give me 30 years in 60 minutes, which I think is 2 minutes a year, something like that. So Mary, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, thank you for asking me. I love to talk about how we started. I love the beginning of Young Living because it's quite unbelievable.
Yes. And so, well, let's start there. Take us back, give us some context. I know you were in network marketing before you met Gary, so maybe tell us about that. Sunrider. And what did you do there?
Well, it's an odd story because my father had invested in a gold mine in Colombia, South America. And at the same time, I had a little t-shirt business. And when it was summertime, that was time for the t-shirts. So I would fly home from Colombia, and my mother and I would go and sell my t-shirts. And we were at the Utah State Fair, and Mother was in the booth, and I decided I would go walking. And as I walked around, I came to a booth where a gentleman was selling aluminum welding rod. And we needed aluminum welding rod for the mine in South America. So as we were talking about this welding rod, he pulls a bottle of stevia out of his pocket and he sticks it in my face and says, "Are you interested in a natural sweetener?" And I said, "Well, I might be." And he had no idea who he was talking to. I mean, my father was a chiropractor. I grew up in a very health-minded home. We didn't use white sugar. We didn't eat out. We didn't eat fast food. We didn't have soda pop in our house and all that kind of stuff. So he really had no idea who he was talking to. Well, he invited me to a meeting to which I did not want to go. I don't like going to meetings. He was an hour north. It was in November. It was cold. I didn't have heat in my VW. It's just, no. And yet there was this underlying force that said, "Mary, you need to go." So I followed that prompting and I went to this meeting, and it was about Chinese herbs, and I liked what I heard. So this gentleman and his wife took me to dinner at JB's fast food joint. And I had something to eat, and they told me about their company. And I mean, they didn't tell me that there was a way to make money. They just talked about product. And I was interested, so I signed up, and I liked what happened. I liked the products, and I started telling my friends, and I got a check for $5. Didn't have a clue what that meant. Called the company to see if they'd made a mistake, and they said, "No, that's what you earned." And I said, "Oh my goodness, $5, big deal." And the next month I got a check for $100. Well, at that point in time, I decided I better read their policies and procedures and find out what it was all about. Because, in this business, nobody reads the policies and procedures. They just check the box.
Right.
And when I read what was written there, I thought, wow, you could make money doing this. And my father had mortgaged their home that was paid for this gold mining adventure.
Wow.
And of course, it went south.
Oops.
It was just a glorified scam that had a lot of bells and whistles. And my father's in his late 60s. So it was a real blow to them financially. And my brother got involved. There were several in the family who got involved, and it was a very sad situation. Well, as I started building this little networking company of mine, my little business, my goal was to make $2,000 a month. And I thought I could be happy the rest of my life making $2,000 a month. And by the end of the year, my check was over $10,000.
Mary's experience is not typical, and this interview does not address the time, effort, and skill she deployed to earn that exceptional income. While we cannot speak to typical earnings at her prior company back in the 1980s, we can confirm that in Young Living, only a small percentage of brand partners earn $10,000 per month. For more details on average earnings by rank, please refer to the Young Living Income Disclosure Statement. Income with Young Living is not guaranteed, and it depends entirely on the individual's effort, time investment, leadership ability, and other market factors. You can view Young Living's full income disclosure statement at youngliving.com/IDS.
And I was extremely, I don't know how to describe it. It was more than I could even imagine. And so I started paying off my father's mortgage. And he had Parkinson's. He eventually ended up in a hospital bed in the living room, and my mother was taking care of him. So it was really hard. And I know that he was tormented because he didn't know what he was going to do, and he didn't want to die and leave mother this horrible mortgage payment, and he didn't know what to do. So about 3 years on into my building, and by then I was making a little bit more money. I was greatly motivated. And I wish people could understand in this industry, if you have a good product or something that you're really excited about, you can save yourself a lot of misery by getting involved and making a little money as you have fun with products. And I saw both sides of it, and I was really excited. And in 3 years, I paid that mortgage off.
Wow.
And I remember I told my father that he didn't have to worry about mother anymore because the mortgage had been paid. And he passed away just a few months after that.
Wow.
So I have a very dramatic experience about this business. And I was a scaredy cat. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to build. I had no business experience, but I had good logic. I had a sense about things. I have a lot of business in my family. A sister's with a MBA in business, a father with an MBA in finance. There's a lot of good business education. So I come by it naturally, but I wanted to sing, so I didn't go that direction.
I'm sure people would like to know, Mary, what did you do in that 3 years to earn that kind of money? How did you go about building that kind of team?
I cared about my people. For me, that's the secret to building a business. It's follow-up. People won't listen to you until they know how much you care about them. And I really cared. And I was so insecure in talking to people I didn't know that I would call those people to whom I had introduced the business, and I would say, how you doing, blah, blah, blah. And, oh, do you have a few people you'd like to invite? If you invited them over to your house, I'll come and help you do the meeting, or I'll do the meeting for you. But I had an agenda. And the agenda was that I would get them involved, and I would let them teach themselves or let them discover that they had the ability to do that as well. And so I did a lot of meetings in different people's homes, and I would always invite the person with whom I was doing the meeting to talk about this and talk about that. And I watched a lot of people discover they could do things they didn't think they could do, just as I discovered I could do what I didn't think I could do.
Yeah.
In the professional music world, in any music situation, you memorize, go on stage, do what you memorize, and walk off stage. There's no ad lib. There's no certain unexpected things that you have to do. It's all planned out. Well, in this business, nothing's planned out. It's all about how the conversation goes with the people with whom you're speaking. So I had a lot of fun. I love the kitchen table, and the idea in Young Living, the kitchen table came from me because that's how I built my business. They had their equivalent of what we would call a starter pack. I would dump it out on the table, and I would go through each product, and I would tell them exactly what each product did. And every single person said, well, can I have this? And I'd say, sure. And they'd pay me for it, or I'd let them order it when they signed up, and then they would give it to me. And so it just went around and around. It was just a circle. And I did that, I would say 90% of the time. That's how I built, because I was the most comfortable one-on-one, the most comfortable at the kitchen table. And I would call someone up on the phone, a friend. I'd say, hey, Susan, how you doing? What's new? As conversation goes. And I'd say, well, I've discovered this product and I really like it. And I think it would be really great for you too. And I can't get you out of my mind. I don't care if you buy it or you don't buy it, but I have to get you out of my mind. And I can't get you out of my mind if I don't come and tell you about it. So can I come tell you about it?
I love that. That's so good.
And every single person said yes. I never had anyone tell me no.
That's brilliant.
Well, I was telling them how much I cared about them. If you have credibility with the people with whom you speak, they'll always say yes. And I signed up. Go ahead.
Can you speak to your activity level, Mary? Did you do this like whenever you felt like it?
Yeah, I did. I tried to do it whenever I got up the courage to call somebody on the phone.
Do you think that was every day, or was it once a week, or?
Oh, maybe a couple of times a week.
Okay. And how many meetings did you do a week?
1 or 2.
Okay.
1 or 2. I was still very involved with my music.
Yep.
But if I could sign up one person a week, I was really happy.
Yeah, one person a week will do it.
Yeah. And
So-
I signed up every single person I talked to at their kitchen table.
With a
I
yellow
always
pad?
went to their home. I never invited anyone to my home. It was always on their turf.
Sure. Love that.
And it worked. And as it grew, I found myself loving the business. And so I would have my leaders do product and I would do the business.
Ah.
And I would tell them why I thought the business was important. I mean, I think it's more important nowadays than it's ever been.
Sure.
How many people can't pay for new shoes for their kids for school? Just last week, I had a conversation with someone who's trying to figure out how to get enough money to pay their tuition for the university. I don't want to live like that.
No.
I lived like that. I lived in South America. I lived in Europe. I was in Vienna for 7 years. I barely had enough money to pay for my schooling, and I ate 1 meal a day.
Wow.
Well, that's not quite true. I had oatmeal every morning of my life. And then I would walk from the academy, stop at the little meat shop, buy a piece of meat, go home, cook the meat, cook the vegetable, whatever. That was my meal. And the evening, I usually had yogurt or something like that. I never ate in a restaurant. I went to a restaurant with my friends. And in Austria, you can't go to a restaurant and not order something. It is very impolite and unacceptable. So I couldn't just drink water. So I always would have heiße Limonade, which is hot lemonade. That was acceptable. Well,
Wow.
I watched my friends eat Wiener Schnitzel and everything, and I'm just starving. But I couldn't spend the money. I didn't have the money to spend. And I went without. I walked everywhere. I went without, but I had what I needed. And I got what I went after.
Speaking of getting what you go after, tell us about the best person you ever recruited when you met this guy named Gary and you recruited him.
No, I didn't recruit him. He tried to recruit me, but he really wasn't successful.
Tell us how you met him.
I mean, I understood the field. I'm still a field person at heart. I love to be out there. I love networking. I love all of that. And I basically crossed over into the other side, into the company side when I met Gary. But I was kind of looking for something else, but I didn't know what there was. I wanted something I could believe in that I thought was honest. But there was a gentleman speaking at a preparedness expo at the Salt Palace who I wanted to hear.
Wow.
And so I went to the expo. And he was a colonel in Vietnam, and he talked about the corruption in Vietnam. And I've been a freedom fighter. I've been on the Patriot side my whole life. And I loved what he said. And I was sitting at the very top in the bleachers. There were about at least 10,000 people there.
Wow.
And I don't remember one word he said except that. At the end, he said, "Whatever you do, check out those oils. Thank you very much," and walked off stage. And I'm saying there, what? What is he talking about? Well, I wandered around. I could see a little sign that said essential oils. I didn't know if that's what he was talking about. But there were so many people in the aisle, I couldn't get down it. So I didn't bother. And then as a single person, I was often the last person out because I like to walk around when most of the people were gone and people were packing up and you could get people to talk more specifically. Well, I wandered down that aisle, and here's a teenager, an older teenager, standing behind, one of those white tables. And I said, "So, what are essential oils?" And he started to tell me. And he said, "Well, Gary Young's standing over there in the aisle. You could go ask him what his formula was." It was a very strange meeting because Gary had lost his voice. He'd been talking nonstop for 3 days. And I felt such an energy. I was so nervous to talk to him. And I am never nervous to talk to anybody. But I walked up and chatted just for a minute. And he gave me his oil formula. And I went back to the booth and I bought the oils and a few more of them. And I went home. I was invited to a meeting the next day, to which I did not go. And I said, "Well, call me if you ever come back to town, out of sight, out of mind. I'm gone. You're done." They called a month later. So I went to the meeting. Did not want to go again. And I just felt this pressure. And I sat at the back of the room. It was in a little Holiday Inn. There were maybe 25 people there, max. Didn't know a single soul in the room. But I heard truth. Mm-hmm. And I've always said, people who are looking for truth recognize it when they hear it. And I heard truth, and especially when they talked about oils having a biblical foundation. That was very interesting to me. So the more they talked, the more I wanted to know, who is this Gary Young? So he was coming to town a month later. So I decided I was going to go and find out who he was. And I had already signed up. I was already using the products. Didn't know very much. Didn't really know how to use them. And I had a really fascinating experience because I have never heard anyone talk so fast, naming dates, places, times, people, quoting scripture, everything, without any notes. I mean, if you stopped to take notes, you would miss half of what he said. He spoke so fast. There was so much information there. And I was fascinated with the thought that we grow up hearing the story of frankincense and myrrh being used at Christmas time, and we don't know why. But if you learn about essential oils and you learn about frankincense, you know why. And I became really excited. And I thought to myself, maybe I found another basket I could work out of. And we started, I started asking questions, but again, a little bit nervous. Got a call from his office. A month later, Gary was on his way to Egypt. He needed to go to a camera shop and get more batteries. He needed to go to the bank and get more money. He had a 10-hour layover. Would I please go pick him up and take him? No, I don't want to do that. No. I don't want anything to do with this. Well, Mary, you're not working. Everybody else works, but you have the freedom. Please, will you go do this for us? Okay, I'll go. So
you sure he didn't set that up?
No, he hardly knew me. No. But he was curious because I had a professional business. I had a real business.
Right.
I was a real networker. He didn't have any people who really knew how to build a business. So I called him on the white phone. We chit-chatted on the way into Salt Lake. I got him what he needed. He invited me to lunch at the Hilton, and he offered me a job as his director of marketing. And I laughed. I said, not a chance. I said, I don't want a job. I'm financially independent. I have what I need. I don't want a job, but I will help you. So I wrote the first piece of literature, which was a trifold, which was grammatically correct and didn't have any typos.
That's valuable.
I had so many members come and thank me. Oh, they were so happy. So that's how it all began. He was in St. Mary's. I was on the phone with him in Utah. I went up to St. Mary's a couple of times to help on the farm. I was curious. I wanted to see what he was doing. He was excited. He was building his first distillery. And there were a lot of things that I was a part of up there. I watched it basically from the beginning. And I harvested the first lavender, the first clary sage. I did a lot of funny experiences with I did a lot of funny experiments with Gary. Like he had the idea to tie the lavender at the bottom, so it would be in a small, tight little ball, and then it would be easier to cut. Well, it wasn't. It was a waste. It was a waste of time and money. But I was one who was out there tying those lavender plants. I did a lot of things up there. I was very much a part of all of that. And he had an interesting experience when he was flying into Salt Lake, because Salt Lake was a Delta hub. And so oftentimes he had to fly in there to change planes. Well, he was looking for a place to move to further north, like Montana, Idaho, where there was a bigger city. He'd even looked at Boise. And as they were descending, he heard a voice behind him say, "You should move here." And he turned around and looked, and there was no one sitting there. The third time that happened, he said, "Well, I guess I'm getting a message. I'm supposed to move my operation to Salt Lake." So my mother and I flew up there to help him pack up. And he had called me about 3 weeks before that and said, "Mary, I need you to find a building. I need you to find a realtor who could find us a building where we could start." I didn't know anything about doing that. He said, "Well, just look in the phone book." Sure, Gary. So I started calling around, and I found a really nice lady who said she could come during the evening, and she had a building that might work. So I picked Gary up about 9 p.m. and we drove out to Riverton. I thought Riverton was the end of the earth. Nobody had business out in Riverton. And Riverton today is a very booming, modern area of the whole Salt Lake Valley.
Had you two already decided to stop his other business and start Young Living? No. Okay.
No. He was going to continue, and this was Young Living Inc. at the time. And he wrote me a letter in January of 1993 asking me if I would like to invest, or if I would invest in his company and help him build. And I wrote him what I would call a scathing letter, telling him how dysfunctional his company was, how it was very ill run, that I couldn't imagine someone with his talent could have a company that was so in debt, and that I could never be a part of something that was so dysfunctional and so in debt, and blah, blah, blah. And it was at that time that I suggested that he and I start a company together. I'm writing a book about the beginning of Young Living. We have the book about the farms, but this is the business side. Who was Gary? What he experienced, how he learned, what he came to know, how he built Young Living in the beginning, how it all started. It's very interesting. But there's a piece where I tell my side of the story, and there's a piece where he tells his side of the story.
Oh, I can't wait to read that.
Thousands and thousands of transcripts of meetings that John has digitized. John Wetton has taken everything, and it's fabulous what he's done. So we have all that information to fall back on. So I would say the first half of the book are all of the transcripts that we made from the presentations that Gary gave over the years. So they're Gary's actual words. So he tells his story of how it all happened. And I tell my side of it. It's really interesting.
I'll bet. And I'll bet it's funny. I can't wait to read that.
It's funny. It's funny in many areas. Well, Gary was a funny guy anyway. Yeah. So it just went back and forth and back and forth, and he liked my idea. So that's when Mom and I went up to Spokane to help him pack up. We had not really done anything, but we had packed it up and we were moving everything to Utah.
Who went with you? Your mom?
My mother. My mother loved Gary, and she helped me clean out the old building. Oh, the building in Riverton. It was so disastrous, and the power had been turned off, and we walked through it at night with flashlights. And I said, "Oh, Gary, you can't be serious." And he said, "Yeah, I think this might work." And he said, "Mary will take care of all the paperwork. I've got to go back to Spokane. She can sign all the papers." Thanks, Gary. Well, I went out there in the morning, and it was really disastrous. The gentleman who owned the building was in Moscow, Russia. And so we did the whole thing over fax.
Wow.
And it was a done deal. And I called my mother, and I said, "Can you come out and help me clean?" She was there in an hour with wheelbarrows and shovels and brooms and all kinds of stuff. And for 1 week, we cleaned that building up. Gary came back a week later and sanded the floors and started putting up walls. And we built our first class, fabulous 5,000 square foot building. And
that might fit in one of the closets you have in Lehigh now in the corporate headquarters.
Yeah, it was. And there were so many funny things that happened with Gary, but this is when he textured the ceilings and then he painted them. And I was on my hands and knees scrubbing the floors and trying to get the grease and stuff out of the cracks in the floors and everything. And we're talking, and he says to me, "Mary, one day we're going to be bigger than Amway." And I went, "Oh, Gary." But I learned that when he made a prediction, it came true. It may not come true when he made that prediction, but it came true.
He was a true visionary.
He was a true visionary. There's no doubt. And I remember when he and I were driving home from the office, and he said, "Mary, I need you to do this, that, and the other." And I said, "Oh, Gary, I can't do that." And he looked at me. He said, "You're right. You can't." I went, "If you think you can't, you can't." Boy, what a lesson that was. And many times I would say, "Gary, why do you say those things on stage?" I said, "You know we don't have the money to do that." He said, "Mary, I'm putting the words in motion." And you hear me now, I always say, put those words into motion if you want to be successful. Put those words in motion. Don't say you can't, say you can. Go do it. See it in your mind. Because the universe will bring that energy back to you. Whatever you put out is what comes back. I saw it happen with Gary over and over and over. And sometimes we laughed a lot about me being the realist and Gary the visionary. And sometimes he would go so far off, and I'd say, "Gary, come on, we can't do that." He'd say, "Mary, quit raining on my parade." Sometimes, he loved Kelly beyond anybody, I can tell you. She was just like a second daughter to him, and she was first in his phone. I was second on redial. And I'd call Kelly and I'd say, "What do you think about Gary's latest idea?" She'd say, "Yeah, I don't know. That's really something, isn't it?" And I said, "Well, what should we do?" And she and I came to the conclusion that we just wouldn't do anything. We'd just be quiet and let things kind of die on their own. But other times we had to jump fast. When Gary wanted things done, he wanted it done right now. And when he had a vision about things that were going to be done, he saw it in its completed form, and the rest of us are trying to figure out how to get started. He just had a knowing. He was so visionary. And it was hard for all of us at times because it was hard to keep up with him. But I believe that's how we have what we have. He believed that the oils, I don't know how to say this if you're going to have this being said. If other people are going to be listening, I don't know how to say this, but He believed that God gave him the mission to bring the power of essential oils to the world. He really believed that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was not going to disappoint God. And so for him, it was a mission from God, and he was going forward with it no matter what. I think that's the only thing that kept him going, because it was so horrible in the beginning with the things that people said and the things that people did. I mean, he was so laughed at and so challenged and so made fun of, and being a snake oil salesman. But as I said before, people who are looking for truth recognize it when they hear it. I heard truth, and many, many, many other people heard truth. And many people joined him against the odds. And many people wanted what he had.
Can you tell us, Mary, about what was the actual process once you started the new company and you're in the building? What was the process for building the business? How did the business get built? Like, who got recruited in that first year? Do you know any of those people?
Oh, yeah.
They still with us?
Oh, yeah. The ones who are alive are.
Do you care to share?
There are many of them who are gone, but
Who are some of those people?
Well, just let me give you a little background. Clint Walker, the famous movie star. Anna-Maya Eisving, or Anna-Maya Powell, who lives in Coeur d'Alene right now. Eldon and Nancy Nettle. And Eldon's gone, but Nancy still lives in Texas. But they loved what Gary had. And they would call Gary and say, can you come do a meeting for us? Gary was a one-man band. And this is before my time. But he would set up the meeting, or they would set up the meeting. He would take the orders. He would fill the orders. He would take them to UPS. At the end of the month, he would push all the furniture back in the living room, and he would calculate the commission checks. He did almost the same thing. We were like a one-man band, but we had a little computer system because it was too difficult by then. There were too many. But the same people from the old company came to the new company. Everybody came because everybody wanted Gary.
Got it.
So Eldon would call, Nancy would call and say, Gary, can you come to Dallas and do a meeting for us? And Loretta Lonebright in Kansas or in Arkansas wants you to come and do a meeting for her in her health food store. And they would just travel around from place to place, and Gary would just do meeting after meeting after meeting. Every day he did a meeting. And the people would flock. They would sign up. And it just grew exponentially that way. It just continued to grow. And
do you remember some of the first network marketing leaders, like people that, yes, loved the product and loved Gary, but they saw the network marketing opportunity and they started building that way? Did any of those people show up in the first year?
No, it didn't happen that way.
Huh.
It happened with product. It happened with Gary. They came because of Gary, because of what he taught, because of his knowing, because of the power of the oils. They all came for that reason. Nobody came for the network marketing side. But Gary said, I have to have people teach about my products. If I put my products on a health food store shelf, who's going to teach anybody about peppermint, about Valor, about purification? Nobody knows anything. He said, we have to have a model where people are teaching people. People who have had the experience are going to share their experience with somebody else. And that's exactly what happened. Right. Exactly. And he loved the network marketing model. I loved that model because that's what I had known. And I loved the network marketing model because it is an opportunity for people to discover that they're more than what they think they are. That they can do more than they think they can. The power of the human mind is so amazing, and people are so programmed to think, I can't do this. I don't know how. I don't have any experience. All those excuses. But I always said, you can tell anybody about anything that you love. If you love peppermint, you can tell people about peppermint. If you love citrus fresh, you can tell people about citrus fresh. If you have some benefit with RC, you can tell them about RC. And I was notorious for just calling people randomly out of the audience and say, hey, Judy, tell us what you know about this product or that product. Well, either you look stupid or you talk. Well, if I know about this product, I'm going to tell you about this product. I've watched people sit down and just absolutely change their whole, change their whole expression because they accomplished something they didn't know they could do.
Yeah.
And that for me was the big reward. I love seeing that. I love seeing people take control of the situation. I love seeing someone give a meeting who never thought they could do that. I love seeing somebody make money who never thought they could. I love to see people become successful when they never thought they could. They never thought it was a possibility. That was my great joy. And I love to talk about business because I could inspire people to see the vision of what a business could do for them personally. It's not about making money, but it's about what money can do.
Right.
And I've always said, good people do good things with money. And most of the money's in the hands of the bad people in the world. Look at our world today.
Yes.
Look at the corruption everywhere, in everything. It's hard to find an honest person. Oh, don't get me on a roll because I get really excited because it's the absolute truth. But if you can be with like-minded people and you can inspire good, honest people to make money and do good things with their money, what are you doing for the world as a whole? It takes money to change things. And it takes the money in the hands of people to change things. Money doesn't do it by itself. It's the people using the money. So I have really, really strong feelings about money and business. But you can't do it in an affiliate program. That's a no-brainer.
That's
It's
a job.
next.
Right.
Who cares about the person to whom you sold whatever it was? That's not what it's about. It's about making money with no purpose. What? The purpose to buy a new car? The purpose to go on a big cruise? The purpose to have a bigger house than you need? You see it everywhere. I had a philosophy. Gary and I had a philosophy. You buy only what you need and you don't buy what you don't need. And that's how we built Young Living. If we didn't have the money for it, we went without. But Gary was fabulous at auctions. He was fabulous at real estate. He was fabulous at making deals. Oh, he was spectacular. He knew how to get what he wanted by making a deal. It's just like the little piece of property we had in Riverton. It was a weed patch, but this big development company wanted our corner. Well, we wouldn't sell them our corner because we weren't ready to leave. But we would sell them our corner when we were ready to leave. So they bought the weed patch. And with that money, which was about $120,000, we bought the first farm in Mona.
Wow.
Yeah, we went to the auctions in Grand Junction. It's the first weekend of every March. And it's at that auction that everybody brings their used equipment, use this, use that, all farming equipment. Oh, it was like a treasure hunt. It was so fun. And Gary bought his first semi. It was an old Freightliner for $3,500. And oh, he was so happy. And we took a whole crew with us. It was about the fourth or fifth time that we went to the auction. And we took my mother and 4 or 5 guys from the farm, and we bought equipment that everybody had to drive home. He bought an old motorhome for like $500 that we used on the farm for workers to stay in. Wouldn't go over 60 miles an hour, and drove Gary nuts because Mother couldn't drive faster. He took me down to the corner, the gas station, the truck stop, and he had a 13-speed dump truck. And he said, "Okay, Mary, get behind the wheel." And I'm going, I can't drive this thing. He said, "Yeah." You go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all you have to know. He said, you got to drive this home because I'm driving the semi. Oh my gosh, I was so scared. When we pulled into the parking lot, into the farm in Mona, I thought I was going to pass out. I was so excited. That was one of the scariest things I had to do. But he just said, you just do this. You can do it. So I did it. We all did it. We all drove something home. You know, it was a truck pulling a trailer, things that we needed. We bought our first forklift for $200 at the auction. And we used it for 2 years. And then we took it back to the auction and it was smoking and chugging. And Gary and I were standing at the back watching and going, please make it over the ramp. Please make it over the ramp. And you know what? At the top of the ramp, we sold it for $400. Oh my goodness, were we excited. But those were the experiences in the beginning. That's how we built Young Living.
What years were those, Mary?
Well, we started in Riverton in Thanksgiving Day, 1993. We incorporated in Riverton in April of 94. We moved to Payson in 95.
When did you buy Mona?
We leased the current farm, the farm that you know, we leased it in 96, and then we bought it in 98. So we made lease payments for 2 years.
And when did you start having any kind of national convention or annual meeting?
The first convention was 95.
How many people?
200.
Where was it?
In Spokane.
You remember what hotel?
I don't know.
Well, I lived there for a lot of years, so I'm curious.
If you named a couple, I could remember probably.
Red Lion.
Yes.
Templin.
I actually think it was the Red Lion. Yes. Yeah. And one day was in Spokane. The next day was at the farm. And that's when Gary had finished building the distillery, the first stainless steel stationary distillery. Oh, he was so happy. He was so excited. He could hardly contain himself. And we distilled wild tansy that day. And there's pictures of him dumping into the cooker. And all these people standing around, 200 people. And Aunt Karma and I cooked dinner in the farm kitchen for everyone because I didn't want to spend the money to have it catered. So I went to Costco and I bought all the chicken and the salad and all the stuff that we needed. And she and I cooked the chicken in the kitchen for 200 people.
I've seen photos of people at St. Mary's, that first convention.
You know, that first convention was when he invited Hazel Purcells to speak. And she was very famous in the health industry. She was a chiropractor. And Gary taught her blood work, and she taught him the balance of alkaline and acid of the body. She was 106 years old.
Whoa.
That was her last public experience. And she sat out under the big tent with us at the farm. And she was just enthralled with what Gary had done. All the things that he talked about, his big dreams. And then Jean-Noel Landel and Jane were there. We just had a marvelous, marvelous time. So that was the thrill of the first convention in 95.
Did you have one every year?
Yes.
So do you remember what year it might have hit 1,000?
I think I actually can remember. I was 95, 96, 98. I think it was like 98, 99, 98 when we hit 1,000. And it was 3,000 when Jacob was born. He was born in 2000. Wow. And I remember we were so excited that there were 3,000 people.
That's huge. Yeah.
It was amazing for us. And of course, Gary always had to have this grand entrance. He had to zip line in or do something wild and crazy. And, you know, the 2010 convention, he rode his stallion in down through the audience and the boys were riding camels on stage. You know, it was the one gift, the big thing of frankincense and the documentary that we made. And it was just fun for everybody. Everybody
So-
loved it.
Was it about 98, 99, 2000 when you feel like the company really took off? Was that a growth decade?
No, I think we were really growing by the time we moved to Payson, which was in 95.
Already growing.
Yeah, we were really growing. We bought a 40,000 square foot old middle school that the city was going to tear down. And we thought, oh, this is such a huge building. Within 3 months, we had to go upstairs. And then we did a battle with the city over not having an elevator, and we won as it being a historical old building. And then we had to get a warehouse. We bought I think it was like a 60,000 square foot building in Springville. And I remember Gary and I, this would have been in like 2001, 2002, something like that. And I remember we were walking through this building, looking up at it. It was so big. Wow. And within 6 months, the racks had gone to the ceiling, out to the walls. And within a couple of years, we were looking to build our own warehouse, which is the warehouse that we have now, which is about 240,000 square feet.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, no matter where Gary went, it wasn't big enough. He just outgrew everything.
When do you remember international expansion like pulling you, and where did you go?
We didn't try to go internationally. It was the people from the other countries who came to us.
Right.
Cliff Winkleman came from Australia. And I remember when he came into the office and he was so excited about the oils, and he kept talking to Gary and asking Gary, begging Gary to please come to Australia. And then there was Norhan from Tokyo who came to our office. He was excited. Gary, please come to Tokyo. Please come and teach. We went to both countries and we said, hey, we got to hurry up and get legal or we're going to have big problems. But it just happened. People just begged us to come. They wanted Gary. They wanted Gary. They wanted Gary. And it was exciting. I remember the first time we went to Singapore. We have a Royal Crown diamond by the name of Frances Fuller. She's in her early 70s. Do you know Frances?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
She's a wonderful, wonderful lady. Frances was a gold at the time. And she was so excited that we made the effort to come. And she had little T-shirts for the boys that were just little. And we had a grand time. I was just with Frances at her center in Bali. Oh, so beautiful. And she said, Mary, I have built this with every dollar from my commission check. Mm-hmm. I have never built it with outside money. Young Living built this center. It's so beautiful. And she helps so many people and she doesn't charge. She's remarkable. The people have done things like that. Von Harding was one of the very first people who I signed up as a distributor when I was a distributor. And Von always said, never do a meeting. I'll never do a meeting. And eventually Von became one of the best trainers we had. Vicky Opfer's another one. Oh, Vicky told me we were in the Holodome in Denver. And she said, Mary, if Gary talks about business, I'm leaving. Oh, she was so anti-business. She and I have laughed about this so much. But when she caught on, boy, did she ever make a transformation. And she was a great business builder. She was great with products. She was a great leader. And then there was Anna Maya. She went out and trained. She was a wonderful trainer. So, it just all evolved. It just all evolved. Gary told me, even Eldon told me that he and Nancy were doing something. There was some kind of expo in Dallas. And Eldon got bored, so he decided to go walking around. And he came past this room and he heard this guy speaking and he heard something that caught his attention. So he went in and sat down at the back. Well, he stayed through Gary's lecture. Afterwards, he went up and talked to Gary about essential oils. Eldon was a believer. He heard truth when Gary spoke it. And he wanted to know more. And he took Gary back to their booth, introduced him to Nancy. They became fast, lifelong friends. And Eldon was one who went everywhere with Gary. Eldon was a mechanic. He could drive semis. He was a builder. He could do everything. He was a lot like Gary. And every time we had the harvest at Highland Flats, and Gary would drive the 200 miles back to St. Mary's to distill, Eldon would come up and drive semi with Gary. Eldon was the only other one who could drive that treacherous drive because they were putting chains on 5, 6, 7 times to get through the ice and snow and driving up the Benoit, that dirt road. It was terrible. It was horrible. And I remember Gary hired, this gentleman was a member. He was a semi driver and told Gary he would love to help. So Gary hired him to drive for us, but he was a flatlander, which is someone who just drives the flatland. By the time he got to St. Mary's, Marcy said he was shaking so bad. He asked her to take him to the airport, and he left, and we never heard from him. That's how scary it was, how treacherous it was. But Gary was one to take the members with him. He had them go in the semi with him. He had them come to the farms. He wanted the members to be a part of what he was doing. He always wanted everyone to come and experience what he was discovering, to see what he knew. He wanted them to see what it took to get an essential oil. So, as you know, we have all these farm events. Members are invited to come and be there for the harvest in the dead of winter. Be there in the spring for spring planting. Be there for the harvest in the summer. And thousands of members have come. And it's been so rewarding for Gary. But it was hilarious. That first time, it was like 19 years he had been driving to St. Mary's for the harvest. And I was with him in the semi. We were just loaded, and he came to the railroad tracks, and he started to pull out left onto the road. And I said, Gary, where are you going? What are you doing? And he looked at me and he went, oh, you're right. And he turned to the right to drive to Highland Flats. The first time going to the new distillery. He told me that, I don't know if you've been to Highland Flats.
I have.
You've seen the indoor bay where they can drive the semi in,
Oh, yeah.
where it's heated.
Mm-hmm.
The first time he did that, Sherry Ross was there, and Sherry started to cry. She was so overwhelmed that they could unload where it was warm. Sherry came to almost every harvest. She was one of the greatest supports he had with the farms. She's a farm girl, and she loved the farm, loves the farm equipment, and she's always there. She's always giving of her time, always teaching Raindrop, always wanting to help. But she cried. She was so overwhelmed.
Buying the farms seems like one of the most important distinctions that Young Living has. And I imagine as you're trying to grow a marketing company, diverting that kind of cash to buying a farm when maybe you don't really need it, that had to be a tough decision. But my experience in Young Living is the farm experience. That's the most spiritual Young Living connecting event there is. It is, I mean, nobody has that.
No.
And impossible to recreate it.
Impossible.
How many farms does Young Living have now around the world?
I think there's about 9.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're all over the world.
They're all over the world.
Yeah.
It's fascinating when you think about the farms, because Gary said, well, I need farms to grow different crops in different areas of the world. And they all came out of unusual needs, unusual experiences. Of course, the French farm in Simeon was always Gary's first dream because that's where he learned distillation through all of his connections there, through Jean-Noel, Marcel, all of them. And he loved France. He loved all of those people. Even though they didn't speak the same language, they understood each other. And they felt like Gary was at home when he returned there. But Gary wanted to build his own. He wanted his own farm. And they all laughed at him. Oh, this American who thinks he can do what we can do. Marcel made the most fun of Gary. And Marcel Espew was the president of the Lavender Association for over 20 years. And his family had been distilling lavender for generations. And Gary offered to attend the firebox and help Marcel. And Marcel taught Gary. And Gary would make notes. He would draw diagrams. I have some of those diagrams. They're available for people to see in the museum at our headquarters. And when Gary built the distillery here, he invited Marcel and his wife to come and speak at convention. And that was in 2000. That was in 2002. And
didn't he smuggle the seeds in his boots?
Oh,
or is that folklore?
I think it's folklore. I don't know. People
it's a good story.
People say that Gary put seeds in his boot. I don't know that Gary did that. I don't know. We brought home so much in our suitcases. I never worried about smuggling anything. I never tried to smuggle anything. Nobody ever asked any questions. I don't know. Maybe Gary tried it once. I don't know, but I did not have that experience with Gary. It's hilarious. It sounds fun. I don't know.
All of this culminated, or at least for me, not long after I got involved, Mary. There were 30,000 plus people at the annual meeting.
That was at the stadium.
30,000. Yeah. 200 to 30,000 25 years later.
Yeah. That's when he drove the dogs in, the dog sled.
I remember.
Yeah.
And I know it's probably on everybody's mind. I think it's just a really important part of the story that I want to hear, and I think people want to hear, that not long after that, Gary passed. And I think a big part of this story, Mary, is I can't even imagine if something happened to Kimmy. I think I would just curl up in a ball and rot. I don't think I'd come out of the house for years. I wouldn't want to talk to anybody. I wouldn't want to do anything. But you didn't have that luxury because you had a multi-billion-dollar company and millions of people counting on you. Well, what was that like to all of a sudden, this is all on you and you have to keep it moving forward? What was that like?
It's not a simple story. I can't tell it simply.
Don't tell it.
But Gary had that terrible accident when he was 24.
Yeah.
And he was confined to a wheelchair, told he would never walk again. And he said, I'm out of the wheelchair or I'm out of this life. And after 3 attempts at suicide by trying to fast himself to death the last time, the doctor said his body probably did not get enough nutrients to manufacture scar tissue. And so the nerve endings started to reconnect. His father built bars out of logs because he was living with his parents. And he pulled himself on those bars hour after hour after hour. And he went from the wheelchair to crutches, walker, cane, and he never lived a day without pain. The doctor said that which he experienced, he would experience again later in life. He had an open skull fracture. He had 3 open skull fractures. He had one right here. He had a dent. No, it's on the right side. He had a dent on this side where you could put a pencil. And if you ever looked at him, you could see one eyebrow was lower than the other. He had tremendous blood clots. He had the fluid in his brain moving from one side to the other. He passed out on an airplane. He was grounded for 2 years. The airlines wouldn't let him fly. And he just kept doing what he was doing to nutritionally feed his body to see if he could regain health. Everything that he did was about regaining his health. The clinic in Mexico was about learning about his body, learning about the blood, what he could do to help himself. But everybody else was the side benefit. Everybody benefited from what Gary learned. As I lived with him, he was never a day without pain. Sometimes I would wake up, I would be startled and see him sitting on the side of the bed in pain. And I would massage his legs. Sometimes I would massage his legs till I would almost fall asleep. And that was about the only relief that he got. People criticized him for being so wild in his adventures. With the way he snowmobiled and the crazy stuff that he did. And to this day, Jacob is the only one who could keep up with him. Jacob was the only one who followed him. And I used to say, Gary, why do you do that stuff? And he said, Mary, when I have an adrenaline rush, I don't have any more pain. That's why he did it. Mm-hmm. Well, as time went on, the pain intensified. We did a lot of things to see what we could do to stop the pain. But it never changed. But he just continued on. Then we were in Ecuador. He went to the Amazon, and he liked to go into the villages. He liked to go into the remote areas. He loved to be with the natives. He wanted to build schools for the native children. I don't know, he just had such a connection to these people who had so little. He wanted to help. Well, he stayed in this little shack. He slept the way they slept. He woke up one morning and he had a welt on his side. And he brushed the welt and he said, Mary, it was so painful. And he used up every drop of oil he had trying to see what he could do to stop the pain, stop the welt. He finally got back to Guayaquil. They thought maybe it was dengue. They don't know what he had. They couldn't figure it out. But he got a couple of IVs and it helped a lot. He had a meeting with Dr. Casabianca in France. He wasn't going to let that go by. So I packed his bags and he left. And then he went from there to be with Mahmoud in Oman. And then John Wetton met him there. And then they went chasing frankincense trees in different countries. And he called me and said, Mary, you got to get me home. The fever was 105, 106. He couldn't bring it down. He was out of oils. Ice didn't help. Nothing helped. He was really miserable. So he came home. Couldn't figure out what it was. Couldn't do anything. I took him down to the hospital in American Fork. They had diagnosed him with 5 or 6 diseases. Took him up to the University of Utah. He was in the infectious disease ward. Doctors came in hazmat suits and looked ridiculous while I walked in, and I didn't have to put a suit on or anything. And we were there for 10 days, and the diagnosis came back as an unknown virus from the Center of Disease Control in Rochester, New York. He went right from there to Tabiona for men's camp. Ollie Wanker was up there. He talked with Ollie. And by then he was starting to have funny things with his heart. His heart would stop and start irregularly. And Ollie said, well, why don't you come down to Houston because I can take you to all my friends, my doctor friends, which he did. And we met with this really famous cardiologist who was going to do some tests and talked with Gary about possibilities and this, that, and the other. And the subject of the bite came up. And he said, tell me more. Well, as he heard what Gary went through, he said, well, that sounds like Chagas. And we looked at each other and said, what's that? And I looked it up on the internet, and Chagas is a horrible, fatal bite. It's a horrible, fatal virus that comes from the bite of an insect in South America. And Gary had every single symptom, every single one. So then they got more serious about his heart. He ended up having a heart ablation, which is where they go in through the vein up into the heart, and they burn places where the cells have gathered and the heart is misfiring. The doctor told me he did 5 of them, but he was afraid to do more because it might damage the heart. And they put in a defibrillator. When we got home and he turned over in bed, he got a shock and he woke up, thought we were having an earthquake. As it turned out, one of the leads from the defibrillator was not connected and it was swinging free in the heart. And so they turned that off. They were going to go back in and take it out. But Gary was he was having so much trouble with his heart. And he had so much pain, and he would say things to me like, Mary, I'm not going to be here too much longer. Mary, I don't know how much longer I can deal with this pain. Mary, you can run Young Living. Gary, don't say that. And he said, Mary, we built this together. You can run Young Living. I know you can. I've given you everything you need. You don't need me anymore to run Young Living. I said, Gary, don't say things like that. I couldn't stand it. But he was warning me. He was telling me. He had a knowing. He absolutely had a knowing. He wanted to live. He said to me, my only regret is that I'm not going to be able to teach my 2 sons everything I want to teach them. Oh, it was gut-wrenching. But he was upstairs getting ready to go to the office, and he was in so much pain, he passed out on the floor. And I called 911. I think this is either the second or third time, I don't know. And they came and they got him down to the hospital, got him upright, put a hydration IV bag on him. He was fine. He stood up and he looked at me and he says, come on, Mary, let's get out of here. And I said, okay. And the doctor signed the waiver. And I walked out the door and I turned around and I said, Gary, come on. And he had sat back down and he didn't talk. He didn't respond. That was the first stroke.
Wow.
So they took him up to the university. And he was up there, and that guy, I don't know, I walked in, I saw the x-rays, and he had a stroke. It was on one side and a little bit on the other side, but not much. And he had total cognitive awareness. And he could talk. And I went in, and I'm holding his hands, and he looked at me and said, Mary, this isn't my first rodeo. We can do this. And I thought to myself, yeah, and you're not 24 years old either. And, Tammy Packer was up there every day massaging. Ollie came up from Houston. Ollie spent so much time with Gary. They were very, very close friends in a way that is rare. And Ollie knew what was going on. Ollie did all that he could to help. We finally got him home. I had a bed in my living room. I had 2 beds on the side. And Tammy and I slept there at night to be with him. He was never, ever alone. Kelly came up almost every night and massaged his feet with vetiver. And he gave her a list of all the things that he wanted her to get for the snowmobile party we were going to have on the weekend. There was no stopping in his thought process for life. And Kelly and I would look at each other and just smile. And she was so fantastic the way he took his direction and everything. There were so many who came. Kevin Pace, our former CFO, was there almost every day. He stayed with Gary in the hospital. He came so many times to help me and be with me so I could go and do the things that I could do. There were so many who came. Ben came. Joe Walker came. I just can't tell you how many came. It was really hard on John Wetton because John had been with Gary all those years traveling the world. I think it's still hard on John like it is on me. But I had to go up to Tabiona because we had a Chinese delegation who came and they wanted to see Tabby. So I drove up and I got a call the day after I got there that said, there's a bone sticking out in Gary's leg. We don't know what's happened. So I drove like crazy down the mountain to get to the hospital. The x-ray showed his leg was broken. They called the doctor up at the trauma hospital in Salt Lake, and he said he would look at it. So I got him up there, and I said, and Gary was really out of it. And I was standing by the bed, and I said, Gary, and he opened his eyes, and he looked at me. And I said, Gary, are you going to stay? Are you going to stay with me? And he said, Mary, I want to stay. And I said, okay, then I will fight with you. And they did the operation the next day. The doctor put in the rod. Everything went great. He said he can stand on his leg, and we were all enthusiastic that maybe he was going to pull out of it. I believed to the very end he was going to pull out of it. I couldn't see it because I couldn't believe it. He was supposed to be in a regular room, and they didn't call me. And finally I heard he was in ICU. Why? So I went up to ICU. Blood pressure was low. Heart rate was up. And they brought him in, and I looked at Gary, and he lit up like a light bulb when he saw me. He was so happy to see me, and I said, Gary, what could I get you? And he said, Mary, get me Trauma Life. Those were the last words he ever spoke to me.
What is Trauma Life?
Trauma Life is a blend
Oh,
to help you get through trauma. And they
Wow.
took him in the room. I had some crushed ice, and he really took to that fast. His mouth must have been so terribly dry. Well, we had friends staying up there, had someone there, and said, I had the boys at home. So I'm battling two areas. I'm halfway down the freeway when I get a call, Mary, Gary's taking a turn for the worst. So I took the exit, went under the freeway, drove back up there. And it was horrible. It was just horrible to see. And in the morning, I went into the office of the doctor who was over ICU, and he showed me the x-rays. And Gary had had a bilateral stroke, and the blood was covered completely both sides of his brain.
wow.
And he said, Mary, if it were one thing he might recover, the fact that it's many, it's doubtful, but he might. But he will probably never speak again, and he certainly will never walk again. And as I walked from the office down to his room, I said to myself, I cannot let Gary live like this. This is not Gary Young. I called Jacob and I said, Jacob, do you want to be here when Dad goes? He said, of course. And he was with Kate. And so Kate came up to the hospital with him. And Kate was holding Jacob's hand when Gary passed. I called Lynn Biesinger, whose son McKay is Joseph's best friend, and said, can you bring Joseph up? So both the boys had one of Gary's hands, and I had my arm around his head, and I told him to take everything off of him. I said, it's his choice. And he was gone in 20 minutes.
Wow.
I believe that I was in a state of shock for probably 2 years. I couldn't quit crying. I would go to the office, and I was angry. I was so angry. And I go into the office, and they make a big deal about Mary being the CEO and all that stuff. I hated it. I just hated it. I did not want to take Gary's place.
I think I was in your presence a time or two during those 2 years.
I don't know what you could tell because I put on a good face.
You did. I could tell.
I put on a good face, but I would leave the office. I'd walk in my back door and I'd sit at the kitchen table and I would just bawl and bawl and bawl. I couldn't stop crying. It was so horrible. I flew to Ecuador for a wedding of one of our longtime employees, and Sabina DeVita and her husband Jeffrey flew down, and we were together for this wedding. And Jeff and Sabina were flying out, and Sabina, as she walked out the front door of the house, she put her carry-on down and she turned around and looked at me and she said, Mary, the spirit never dies. Gary is here. He's trying to talk to you, but you are crying so much he can't get through. And it just shook me like that. And I just, wow, I'd never had anybody say anything like that to me before. I never thought anything like that was even possible. So I quit crying and I started listening. I'd sit out on the back porch of my house and I'd talk to the air and I'd listen and I'd think. And I had a lot of weird things happen. I can't even describe the weird things that happened to me. And sometimes I'd sit at my computer and I'd say, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to write. I'd say, Gary, come on, Gary, help me. I don't know what to write. And suddenly my hands would start typing and they would type faster than the words came into my head. I've had that happen so many times. And I'd get on stage and I'd speak and people would say, you sound just like Gary. You're channeling Gary. I didn't know much about that kind of stuff. I grew up in a very naive home where those kinds of things didn't exist. They weren't talked about. I couldn't relate to things of the other world. And yet I watched Gary for 25 years connect to the other world. I watched how he talked to God. Oh my gosh, you never heard anybody talk to God like he did. It was indescribable. It was so spiritual. It was so sacred. It was so uplifting and heartwarming and gave you so much hope. And so I've taken on Young Living with that attitude. People say, well, Mary can't talk about God. And I said, well, I am about God. We are about God. We're a God-driven company. And if you don't like it, bye. Gary was highly criticized because he talked about God. Highly, highly criticized. He'd get notes in the mail. People would hand him notes and say, you can't talk about God. You can't mix God and religion. He didn't talk about religion. He talked about God and his association, his connection to God, and how he wanted everyone else to have that same connection. Because when you can connect with God, you're a better person. And that's what he wanted for everyone. So I tell people, you have your own experience with the oils. The oils are created by God because they're the living essence within the plants that God creates. He's the creator. So do you not have some kind of a connection? Would you not have some kind of a connection? You can't with an adulterated oil or a synthetic oil because there's no soul there. It's a dead substance. But with the real essence from a live plant, Why do people want to eat raw vegetables? Why do people grow a garden? Because they want the real living substance. People say, well, Mary, you always look so young. Mary, you have so much energy. That's how I live. I don't live in the fast food world. I don't eat the garbage. I don't eat sugar. I don't eat white flour. I don't drink soda pop. And at my age, I need to be strong and healthy because I have 2 young boys who I believe will lead young living eventually. And I want to be there for them.
Tell us about that.
Well,
How is Young Living going to become bigger than Amway?
I don't know. I don't know. It's yet to be revealed. I don't know.
I believe it is. I believe it's one of the few, maybe the only company that has the right shot at it. Very doable.
I think so. I tell people we are the real deal. We are real. When I look at you, I speak truth. I don't have to make it up. I don't have to exaggerate. I don't have to try to remember what I said yesterday. Speak your truth and walk your talk. And
So what about Jacob and Joseph? What do you see for them? I know Jacob's already running North America. I think that's brilliant. Awesome.
Yeah, and that wasn't my idea. That was Ben's. Ben wanted to give him that opportunity. I didn't know. And I remember he came up to the house and I said, well, Jacob, how do you feel about that? Do you want to do it? Are you ready to do it? And he said, yes, I am. I want to make changes. I want to make Young Living great like Dad did. And I went, wow, okay, you're on.
He can.
I'm saying he's Gary 2.0.
I've said the same thing. First time I ever heard him speak, I was like,
wow. Yeah.
He can't be 20. He's got to be 50.
And he speaks
and
like...
he is his father's son, for sure. He just has the same values. He has the same distinctions. He has the same wisdom.
Oh, I have had several conversations with him. I had one just the other day about a problem we were having on one of the farms. And I kind of was a little more mellow about it, and I wanted to help. And he said, Mother, they had this and this and this choice. They had an opportunity. I told them exactly what they needed to do, and they didn't do it. So they have to live with the choices they make. And I just went, wow, are you going to make a powerful leader?
Yeah.
I was so impressed. Gives
us another 50-year run for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And Jacob's on a path with a very beautiful life.
Yeah.
She is so smart, and she's so supportive, loving, giving. I can't say enough good about Kate. And they're a dynamic duo.
And their products are dead on.
Yeah.
Really wonderful.
Yeah, they're having, and that was his idea, and I was not in favor of it. Mm. I couldn't see it. So they put me to shame with that. Joseph, he's his own person. He is so principled. For him, it's black and white. He wants it to be exactly the way it's supposed to be. He's intolerant of lying and cheating. Boy, you tell him something that's not true, you're going to hear about it. He just is so intolerant. And I'm waiting for him to, grow out of that a little bit, which I think he will.
He will find his role and be equally as a huge contribution as Jacob.
Oh, he will. He's going to be dynamic. And I think they're going to complement each other because they're both so very different. And they will take different aspects of the business. And I feel extremely grateful because I have Kelly, Prasad, Ben, John, Ren. I have all of those leaders around him to guide him, guide them and help them. And now with Gaia coming in, I mean, she's a firecracker.
Yep.
And she's going to teach Jacob a lot about marketing, sales, and all that. And I'm excited. So you ask, where am I? I'm right where I am. I have a knowing about things. I know things beyond things. I have experiences. I have strange experiences that are hard for me to explain. I know people criticize me and make fun. Oh, Mary talks to her dead husband, and they say things like that. Well, I think everyone who's lost someone talks to that person.
I would think so.
Yeah, I stand outside in my backyard and I talk all the time. I don't get answers, but sometimes I get ideas, I get feelings. I haven't heard his voice. I hope to hear it. I think Jacob and Joseph have had more experience with Gary on the other side than I have. I mean, Joseph was going to go down to the park at midnight. I said, no, you can't go down there. There's weird people out at night. He said, no, Dad's with me. Dad's watching out and protecting me. And I said, well, why are you going down there? And he said, because I want to be alone when I talk to Dad. And I just go, What do I say to that?
Let it be.
Let it be. Exactly. So I don't tell them much. I'm letting them find their way. When they call me and ask questions, I'm there. But they are very independent old souls. And they have a sense about life. We always said you could talk to Joseph when he was 5 years old and have an adult conversation with a child's vernacular. Jacob's more quiet. He's analytical. He's watching. He's thinking. He's not going to tell you what he's thinking.
I love them both, Mary, and I can't tell you how grateful the field is to have two second-generation leaders to carry on the opportunity, the products, the income. You don't have legacy income unless the company's here forever and it stays network marketing. And that's always at risk with ownership. Even if there's only two owners, if you have a partnership, that's at risk. If you got more than two, you're probably doomed. But to have one family own the company and two young men who have been trained their entire lives to be prepared for this opportunity and responsibility, that's really extraordinary and maybe only happened in Amway.
Yeah, I can't say. I just know that Young Living is something very extraordinary. What Gary did was extraordinary. And there's only one Gary Young. And no one will ever take his place or do what he did. But we don't have to. Because he did it for us. He laid the groundwork. He started it. He took the abuse. He took the criticism. And now you go on PubMed and look what you can find about essential oils.
Right.
It didn't exist in our day.
And he is still here, Mary. I can't tell you how many Young Living leaders that I have talked to. I mean, it's just remarkable how many leaders he spent personal time with.
Yes.
Walking a trail at a farm or working at a farm or sitting at a break during an event or traveling to an event or on an incentive event. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of the top leadership.
Yes.
That have personal experiences, conversations with him that they can remember word for word and they'll never forget.
Yeah.
He is still with us, for sure.
Yeah, I believe that too. And my great desire is to see Young Living become a well-oiled machine that runs strategically with forward-thinking innovation, with people who love and care about what we do. And that our members who have been disenchanted, who are frustrated, who have taken a leave of absence. We'll see what they're missing and come back to help because we need all of them. We need everyone who has had an experience with our products because our products are what make the company. But it's the strategic running of the company that makes it possible for people to build their business.
Yeah.
And I
Gotta
believe
have operational excellence.
Yes.
Or
Yes. And I think that's the path we're on now.
I do
really
too.
believe that.
Seen fantastic progress there, and I love the fact that Ben Riley, he's not family, but he's got as much DNA Young Living as anybody on the planet.
He does, starting as such a young man.
He's a great leader.
Yeah.
Big future in front of us. Thank you, Mary, for sharing the story.
Please feel free to edit me as you
I
see
don't.
fit.
I don't see anything. That's only 94 minutes. I don't see anything worth editing.
I don't know. I got pretty bold there.
It was beautiful. I appreciate it so much. Great story. Great future. Great leadership. Thank you very much for sharing your heart. And that last little piece you gave us, that's vision for Young Living, a well-oiled machine.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me. See ya somewhere in this big world of ours.